Good morning, sir.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning, sir.
Good
Can
morning,
I,
sir.
हो गया.
Good morning, sir.
Ashish,
Good
can I
morning.
start?
Good morning.
A very good morning to everyone. On behalf of Mehr Mahajan DAV College for Women, Chandigarh, I take this opportunity to extend a warm welcome to our guests and all the participants to this webinar to an extremely relevant topic, Indian economy challenges ahead. The Indian economy has been witnessing a slowdown since the second quarter of 2019 due to diverse domestic factors, especially in automobile, real estate, and MSME sectors. But the outbreak of COVID-19 has brought the mankind to bear the dark side of global integration. The shock wave sent by coronavirus and fiscal deficit. The IMF slashed India's growth estimate for financial year 2020-21 to 1.9%, warning it to be the worst recession since the Great Depression. While healthcare professionals and scientists scramble to cope up with the human toll of ongoing epidemic, policymakers worldwide and in India are racing to stabilize their economies, mitigate the damage that has already been inflicted upon livelihoods. It has driven masses into unfamiliar isolation, halted economic activity globally, and extinguished jobs and incomes. Deliberations on macroeconomic policy and growth dynamics are catching up steam to resolve these impending issues. This webinar is a small step in this direction. So today we have the proud privilege to have Shri Sarvesh Kaushal ji as our worthy chief guest and keynote speaker. Sir is a 1981 batch IPS and 1982 batch IAS officer who has served as Chief Secretary to Government of Punjab from 2014 to 2017. He has held diverse important posts during his has been Principal Secretary to Government of Punjab in the Department of Irrigation, Information Technology and School Education. He has also held the post of Secretary to Government of Punjab in Department of Local Self-Government, Information and Public Relations, PWD, Planning, Sports, Youth Services, Medical Education and Research. He has also served as Special Principal Secretary to Chief Minister Punjab and also Deputy Commissioner at Firozpur, Faridkot and Hoshiarpur. Kaushal sir's excellent professional career has been equally complemented by his brilliant academic record. He has been a gold medalist in his post-graduation in history. Sir has also pursued a bachelor's degree in law and a master's degree in economics. He has great passion for the subject of economics and is deeply engrossed in comprehending various issues of Indian economy. Today, we are highly indebted to him for joining us in this seminar, online seminar to enlighten the participants on various challenges faced by the Indian economy. We are also fortunate to have another distinguished speaker and scholar, Dr. Jitendra Singh Bedi, who is the guest of honor for today's virtual event. Dr. Bedi is a professor of economics at the Institute of Development and Communication, Chandigarh, which is a research center of Punjab University. He has a rich experience of 28 years in organizations of national repute such as National Council for Applied Economic Research, New Delhi. His contribution to research and teaching in the subject of economics has been valuable. He has handled several research projects relating to manufacturing sector, agro-based industries, and also worked in areas related to human development, especially housing and education. He has published a number of research papers in journals of national and international reputation. His recent work include Punjab Vision Document 2030, Department of Planning, Government of Punjab. We are very highly grateful to him for being a part of this event. Now I request our principal ma'am, Dr. Nisha Bhargav, to formally welcome our chief guest and guest of honor.
Good morning, everyone. Our chief guest for today, Shri Sarvesh Kaushal ji, IAS, a senior civil servant and an erudite scholar, and our guest of honor, Professor J.S. Bedi, Professor of Economics at Institute for Development and Communication, Professor Harsh Gandhar from USOL, and other distinguished guests, Mrs. Madhvi Bajaj, Head Department of Economics, Dr. Archana Bakshi, Dr. Prerna Sharma, and other faculty members from the institution, and very dear participants. I welcome you all to this webinar on the future challenges before Indian economy. श्री सर्वेश कौशल जी के बारे में कुछ कहना सूरज को रोशनी दिखाने जैसा होगा। मैं सिर्फ ये कहना चाहूंगी कि सर, we are fortunate that you have agreed to deliver a discourse to our students from your vast ocean of knowledge, and we are grateful that you have spared your valuable time for us today. And I extend a very warm welcome to you. And I also extend a very hearty welcome to Professor J.S. Bedi ji, an economist of repute. Dear friends, our country, India, or Bharat, which was once known as the land of snake charmers and saints, has many a time seen the vagaries of war and natural calamities, and it has been invaded, plundered, and ruled by foreigners for many centuries. And then came the relentless struggle for freedom to get the country freed from the shackles of British imperialist powers. After independence, we followed mixed economy pattern characterized by government controls and planning era, which led to consistent growth of Indian economy, except for a few flaws. However, this regime was not free from some drawbacks, and subsequently the public sector could not deliver as much as was expected from it, and huge debt burdens accumulated on the country during 1990s, and consequently there came an era of liberalization, privatization, and globalization, which led to phenomenal growth of the economy. It not only changed economic scenario in the country, but also changed global power equations. And then came the GST and demonetization, which led to an alarming slowdown of the economy. And currently, we are living with the unforeseen calamity in the form of COVID-19 pandemic, which has shaken the economies of many powerful countries. Presently, we are living in the most uncertain times of our lives, but still there is a ray of hope because Indian economy has always shown great resilience and versatility and has always emerged victorious from troughs and trenches, and we are sure that once again she will rise like the great phoenix. As the famous Urdu poet Sir Muhammad Iqbal has said, यूनानो मिस्र रोमा समिट गए जहां से, अब तक मगर है बाकी नामो निशां हमारा, कुछ बात है कि हस्ती मिटती नहीं हमारी, सदियों रहा है दुश्मन दौरे ज़मां हमारा. Once again, I welcome our chief guest, Shri Sarvesh Kaushal ji, and our guest of honor, Professor J.S. Bedi ji, Madam Harsh Gandhar, and other distinguished guests in this webinar on the future challenges of Indian economy. I'm sure that today we will have engrossing and comprehensive discourses by our distinguished guests on the future course of Indian economy, and this will be beneficial for the faculty, for researchers, and for students. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am, for your beautiful and kind words. I now invite Kaushal sir to reflect on various challenges of Indian economy. I request the participants to post their questions in the chat box so that we can have a brief discussion at the end of the webinar. Sir, I'm very happy to announce that more than 600 students are viewing this event live through live streaming of Google Meet. Thank you, sir. And over to you, sir.
Respected Dr. Nisha Bhargav, Principal MCM DAV College for Women, Chandigarh. The Head of the Economics Department, Dr. Malti Bajaj. The coordinators, esteemed economist Dr. J.S. Bedi, research scholars, esteemed faculty, and dear students. Today's topic, Indian economy, the challenges ahead, is a very difficult topic because one can look at every aspect of Indian economy microscopically and deal with it at length. Now, in the 45 minutes that have been assigned to me, I'll try to give my idea of how the things are shaping up and what are the difficulties before us and where do we stand and where do we hope to proceed. And at the end of my lecture, I'm very sure that my most respected Dr. J.S. Bedi will not only fill in the blanks, but also raise the level of discussion to a higher academic levels. We all know India gained independence in 1947, and the Indian economy passed through various challenges. On the eve of independence, its size of population was just about 340 million, and literacy level was just about 12%. Over a period of time, we moved on, and our population has touched 1.34 billions. Literacy level has also jumped to 74%. Our GDP in 1950 was around $30.6 billion. In 2020, it has risen to $3.2 trillion. Our economy is now the fifth largest in the world in terms of nominal GDP and third largest by purchasing power parity. Now, very briefly recapitulating that the Indian economy adopted different models for different patterns of development over the years. During the 1950s, the main emphasis was on the planned economy and the mixed economy. Industrialization began mainly in the public sector, and efforts were made to become self-sufficient in food grains production. In agriculture, happily, India has a surplus in food grains production. The second phase of Indian economy started with economic reforms, which were initiated during 1980s and accelerated from 1990 onwards. In these phases of development of Indian economy, there's one other country, that is China, which can provide a benchmark for comparison. We must keep China in mind when we compare our growth, our development, where we are and where we should be. In 1949, China's population was 540 million, and literacy level was 20%. In 2019, China has a population of 1.32 billions, and literacy is around 85%. Both India and China have significant reservoirs of manpower. The difference is only in the types of government. In China, the government is centralized and quite coercive to achieve its targets, while in India, it's a democratic government where the element of coercion is less and the element of motivation, hand-holding, and facilitation is more. Interestingly, the economic reforms also started in both the countries during 1980s. So I'm comparing India with China to have a better global view of the situation. Now let us come to the present phase of Indian economy, which started in 2014 under the leadership of the present Prime Minister, Modi. The government came out with very energetic slogans and unleashed a new resolve to make a strong economy. The Niti Aayog in 2018 presented the strategy for New India at 75, which is the corollary of Prime Minister's slogan, New India by 2022, aiming at additional 1 trillion of GDP in 3 years. During the COVID-19 pandemic, the Prime Minister has given another call for Atmanirbhar Bharat, self-reliant India, a movement supported by the Vocal for Local, another slogan, and some more other slogans like Make in India, Digital India, Clean India, and so on. Unfortunately, the economy was noticed suffering slowdowns in January 2020. Particularly, though it had started earlier, but it started getting felt. The revised GDP growth estimates were expected to come down, obviously, which became a cause of concern. While we were coping up with that, COVID-19 gave the hardest hit that it could have given to us. Now the situation is such that at times countries which have insufficient cushion for savings getting mobilized into investments, small hits have a major multiplier effect, negative effect. Now consider India's general government deficit, which was estimated at a whopping 7.5 to 9% of the GDP in 2019, mops up the net financial savings of the households, which are estimated at about 11% of the GDP. If the household savings are 11% of the GDP, and the deficit is at 7.5% to 9%, obviously all the savings are mopped up and very little of them are allowed to go on to the investment stream. Earlier, when the economy was not under stress, the gap between the combined deficit and total household savings was 6 to 8% of the GDP. Now it's 2%. So the private sector is very naturally comparatively starved of funds. So that's one situation that we are facing. Our deficit is increasing, household saving is going down, the amount available for corporate investment is shrinking. Let us come to the two immediate factors which impacted the Indian economy, which are firstly the COVID-19 pandemic, as I just mentioned, and secondly, the prospect of India-China military standoff spilling over to the realm of economics. I always emphasize, and flag this issue that ultimately the standoff between India and China will not be a concern of the military. This will spill over to the economy, and we'll have to fight a war. The economists will have to fight a war. The financial and economic administrators will have to fight a war with China in the realm of economics. In terms of per capita income, China is ahead of India. China is an upper middle income country. The per capita income in China is $10,276 US, it is only 2,104 US dollars in India. China and India are trading in large volumes, but unfortunately leaving India to suffer huge trade deficits. Now, COVID is not something which has affected India only. The cost of economic disruption caused globally by the COVID-19 has been estimated between $9 trillion and $33 trillion. There is confusion. We are right in the middle of it. These are estimates. Some estimates say that it's $9 trillion, some say it's $33 trillion. This shows how baffled we are at the moment. But COVID-19 has hit us primarily through the health sector first, and then percolated to other areas. So let us first talk of the health sector. The pandemic has exposed the weaknesses in the walls of infectious disease surveillance and response capabilities. Investments in public health and other public goods are solely undervalued. Investments in preventive measures whose success is invisible, even more undervalued. We need to understand that this pandemic is neither the last one, nor is there any guarantee that pandemics will not come with greater frequency in future also. We have to understand for the future that the cost of preventing a pandemic is much less than the cost of handling a pandemic. In India, the health expenditure as percentage of GDP is 3.5%. In China, it is 5%. And in developed countries like USA, it is 17.6%. The center and state budget allocations to health is around 4 to 5%, whereas other countries allocate around 8 to 10% of the budget to the healthcare. Now I'll explain it in another way. India's tax to GDP ratio is around 10%, while most developed countries have tax to GDP ratio of 30%. Indian economy needs resources to strengthen the health sector leadership, healthcare financing, health workforce, medical products, technologies, information and research, and service delivery, which is the World Health Organization's prescription for achieving the desired outcomes of improved health level, equity, responsiveness, financial risk protection, and improving the efficiency of the health sector. This is one of the major challenges. Do we have to create a robust health infrastructure and preventive systems to prevent the pandemics in future, or do we have to suffer the pandemics? And the pandemics which tend to cause multiple organ failures in the economy. As I mentioned, India's present GDP per capita is around $2,100. In China, it's $7,756. And for the USA, it is $54,659. Indian economy shall have to move forward on a fast track. Just as China's GDP was 5% of US GDP in 1980. I say it again. China's gross domestic product was pegged at 5% of the United States gross domestic product in 1980. But it rose to 60% of United States GDP in 2018. From 5%, they have risen to 60%. As per the World Bank classification, India falls in the lower middle class country group, with gross national income per capita ranging between $1,000 and almost $4,000. China is in the upper category, with its GNI per capita ranging between almost $4,000 to $12,000. That's the category. India's share of GDP is less than 4% of the GDP of the world. China has 13% share of the world GDP, and America has 21. Indian economy definitely needs a determined, consistent, big push to scale itself to much higher and bigger operating economic platform, and then to come out of the economic slowdown that emerged due to pandemic. Now, as I said, the COVID-19 pandemic hits all the organs, like a virus hits all the organs of the body and causes multiple organ failure. Similarly, COVID-19 pandemic has caused financial impact on firms and financial markets, caused all sorts of unemployment, including disguised unemployment and underemployment, stress on banking systems due to moratoria on repayments along with NPAs, given deadly blow to the hospitality sector, tourism sector, transport sector. It has loaded the government with essential cash and kind subsidies liabilities and liabilities of making doles to the people to mitigate the pandemic stress on the poor. And all, besides the poor, all sectors of the economy. COVID-19 definitely has put the Indian economy in a tailspin. However, there is a ray of hope. I don't want to be a prophet of doom. Timely interventions by a decisive and resolute leadership, combined with the tenacity and fighting spirit of the Indians, which the principal madam mentioned, Yunana Mishra Roma submit gaye jahan se, baki hai to kyon namo nishan hamara. The tenacity of the people of India to stand up to the challenge has the potential of converting the pandemic tragedy into a global opportunity to lead the other countries through a process of faster recovery. Everyone is suffering, but the country who recovers faster than others will make it. And our economy does have that potential. Within no times during the lockdown, our production level came to 2 lakh PP kits every day. We became the second largest exporters of PP kits. Our pharmaceutical industry caters to 80% of vaccine supply to the world. Now, research and development of vaccines is taking place all over the world, but they are all after the Indian pharmaceutical industry to buy their manufacturing capacity. They'll do the research, but for making trillions and trillions and trillions of vaccine vials and supply them all over the world, they need India. We have started making indigenous ventilators and so on. What I meant to emphasize was that Indians have the tenacity and the fighting power to come up to the challenge. We should not be prophets of doom. The world was restructured and came up even after the world wars. COVID will come and go. We will stand up. Let me say a few things about banking. Banking is the backbone of any planned economic resurgence. There has been a policy trend to undertake public expenditure by the government either through direct spending or through facilitating bank credit for private investments. Although attention has been paid in the recent past to the non-productive assets accumulated in the banks, and some remedial measures are underway, there has been an indiscrete proportion of lending, at times without adequate diligence, with the sole purpose of accelerating growth. The health of the banking industry is critically at stake because it's the backbone of our planned economic resurgence. Special attention is required to ensure sound health and reliability of the government banking sector, which needs to set up excellent benchmarks for private banks. But very unfortunately, it seems to be the other way around. I'm pained to say that in public perception, The depositors are no longer as confident of the nationalized banks for the security of their deposits as it used to be a decade earlier. It is interesting to note that between March 2018 and March 2019, when the safety perceptions got ruffled, the depositors in private banks exceeded those in the nationalized banks. It's a serious thing. As against rupees 4.8 trillion deposits in private banks, the government bank secured rupees 2.3 trillion of the deposits after netting out the deposits of IDBI from its reclassification as a private bank. It's so serious. 50% deposits in the nationalized banks. Even the foreign portfolio investors preferred private banks. However, there is one saving grace that the nationalized banks still outperform the private banks in return of assets and in return of equity, two indices. The government banks are still better. In 2019 and 20, the government infused 70,000 crore rupees into the public sector banks to boost their credit for strong impetus to the economy. Now, again, I would like to say a few words more about the banks, because banks I consider as the backbone of our economy, our growth. There has been an increasing realization that there should be greater diligence in handling the serious frauds, in securitizing the loans, and tackling the burning issue of non-productive assets of the banks. There has been an emphasis and insistence on provisioning also. And therefore, there has been some reversion to the immensely needed working culture of strictness and due diligence in banking operations. At this pandemic time, of course, it's understandable some of the accounts would run NPAs, especially those which were already in stress. There are measures that are being taken, mergers and other administrative initiatives. This will increase the productivity of the nationalized banks, which otherwise suffer from far lower revenue per employee. Now, another thing, the government banks suffer from far lower revenue per employee as compared to their counterparts in the private banking. That means they are inefficient in terms of management of their human resource. Either they have more human resource than they require, or the per person productivity working in the government banks is not satisfactory. Some introspection is required. It's a matter of very serious concern that the amounts swindled through frauds have been 10 times more in the nationalized bank as compared to their counterpart private banks. Now we understand where the problem lies. This is a challenge. The whole culture has to improve. The government banks have to set an example. They have to provide a benchmark. They cannot set such an example that the cases of serious frauds are 10 times more in government banks as compared to private banks. It's taxpayers' money, it's depositors' money. We have to take up this challenge, and I would welcome very, very strict measures, even though temporarily they may demotivate the banks to do the hand-holding, but at least after some transition period of pain, we will be on a very sound, long-term footing to be the backbone of nation's growth. I won't speak more on the frauds and all. But one point, another challenge that we are facing, it's a moot point in public spending, that the systemic leakages that take away substantial part of the benefits that every unit of input must seek to achieve in the process of pump priming of the economy. Though some bona fide initiatives have been taken, mostly in the form of digitization and DBT measures for prevention of leakages. But the leaking pipes have neither been fully replaced nor adequately repaired. The inevitable result is that more and more money is being pumped into the leaking pipes, and more money pumped in, more and more is the leakage. So this is another challenge, the challenge of economic or financial governance, you may call it. We'll have to resolve this. And we are resolving it, I'm coming to that, through digitization, through DBT, through blockchains, etc. Now, like rest of the world, COVID-19 has thrown Indian economy, systems, market forces topsy-turvy. A demand-driven economy substantially catering to domestic consumption has suddenly reversed into a surplus capacity economy, with the market forces of demand suffering a free fall on account of curtailed consumption levels. This is temporary, but it's a hit, and it will take time to recover. Nothing can generate more demand than a firm resolve towards creating an Atmanirbhar Bharat. The 5 pillars of Atmanirbhar Bharat we all know: economy, infrastructure, which is called the identity of the economy, system, that is to bring in technology-driven solutions, vibrant demography, where our labor force becomes more productive and skilled, creation of demand, tapping of demand supply chain with optimum utilization of resources. These are some of the ingredients of Atmanirbhar Bharat scheme. And the Prime Minister has rightly announced a special economic and comprehensive package of 20 lakh crores, equivalent to 10% of India's GDP, to support the 5 pillars of this Atmanirbhar Bharat. This is the response of the government. Very, very massive, but obviously for a developing country, it is always less than what it should be. But the governments have to act according to their means, because there are other priorities also. But whatever has been done in the right direction. Being self-reliant is critical for the growth strategy of Indian economy and to make it more export-oriented. There are no two ways about it. Just taking note of India's trade flow with China, for an example, the imports by India from China stood at 73.3 billion USD. Much higher than India's export to China, which is just about 16.7 billion USD. And the trade deficit with China is 53.6 billion USD. In the preceding year, the trade deficit came down by 10 billion USD. Even now, it stands at 53.6 billion USD. See, this is a very serious matter. The miracle of growth in industry happened in China by foreign direct investments in the selected regions on the experimental basis. The special economic zones developed with the foreign investments in selected regions became the hubs of manufacturing. Then they created ancillaries, village and semi-village units known as TVEs, linked to markets directly, and became a very vibrant ancillary industry. The labor laws, despite being a communist country, became more flexible, and investments in the enterprises by the locals were also encouraged, despite being a country having very strong communist roots. The private property and rights were not protected by legal system, and the land acquisition was never a hurdle as much as it is in India for setting up industrial units. And gradually, as a matter of policy implementation, the Chinese manufacturing sector shifted from labor intensive to capital intensive industry. Now, much more worrying today is the nature of India's imports from China. We are importing capital goods like power plants, telecom equipments, steel projects. We are importing intermediate products like pharmaceutical APIs. Now, we are proud of our pharmaceutical industries, but all the APIs, which is the backbone of pharmaceutical industry, they are coming from China. Plastics and engineering goods. And we are getting even finished goods like fertilizers, refrigerators, telephones, washing machines, televisions, etc. from China. Now, even low-cost consumer goods meeting every human need at the micro level, Lord Ganesha's statue, framed photographs of Lord Hanuman, this, that, candles, small things which we use every day. We have started importing from China. It has given a severe jolt to the Indian traditional and modern manufacturing sector. So we have to be Atmanirbhar. We have to manufacture the things for our own need. Some people say, okay, put a ban on Chinese imports. Do we have any alternative sources of these imports from where we can get these things at the same rate, with the same speed, in a time-bound manner? Do we have international agreements in place to immediately stop them? No. We'll have to gradually come to a level where we domestically substitute them and arrive at bilateral economic agreements with other parts of the world to see if we can get essential goods, which are raw material of our manufacturing process, from places other than China. So it's just a slogan that stop it. We cannot stop it. And then there are WTO regulations. Even if we don't like a country, we cannot stop certain imports. Now, what is the problem with Indian manufacturing sector? It has always remained in the protection of the state, high import tariffs, inflexible labor laws, protection to small industries, inefficiency in the state-owned enterprises could not provide either the leadership or the required benchmarks. Now, SMEs particularly will have to shed their internal inefficiencies, fundamentally caused by complacent, unprofessional, and hereditary ownership cum managements. Time has come when the increasing international competition will not allow the industry the luxury it has enjoyed so far of passing on the cost of its inefficiencies to the consumers, who opt for products with higher quality with much lesser cost now. Every consumer is a prudent consumer. If we have to compete and wipe out unwanted imports from other countries, we have to shed our inefficiencies. So that brings me to MSMEs, micro, small, and medium enterprises. Very vital sector for Atmanirbhar India. They contribute as much as 30% of the Indian GDP, and they are our top priority. RBI has stepped in to restructure their advances, and there has been a liberal classification in August 2020, raising the aggregate exposure limit for the borrower of rupees 25 crores as on March the 1st, 2020, with few more conditions. This will save many of them from slipping into the NPA category. Similarly, the RBI has allowed banks to reckon the funds infused by the promoters in their MSMSE units through loans under credit guarantee and fund trust for micro and small enterprises. This will further help them out. Another challenge that we face is to make the Indian economy leapfrog ahead of others by the dint of creative policy on innovation. The three pillars of the innovation policy of the year 2000, talent, technology, and trust. And these are, of course, slogans. They are aimed at orienting public procurement towards innovative production. But we have to implement it. We have to push it very, very hard. Otherwise, without technology, without science, without research, without development, without patents, with the talent moving away from home to other countries and contributing to their development, we can't leapfrog. We cannot leave others behind in our post-COVID reconstruction. Now I have another 6 minutes, and I'll try to be as short as possible. One area is our population. Some of us feel it's a liability, it's a challenge. If we can convert this population into our strength by imparting them skills and by giving them the resources to be productive, this challenge will be met. See, it is a matter of concern that the value added per worker in India is just about 10% of a US worker. China's labor productivity in terms of value added per worker is 2.5 times more as compared to India. This is the reality. Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Vikas Yojana is operated by Ministry of Skill Development and Entrepreneurship. It has the potential of giving a quantum jump to the gross national product by increasing productivity and increasing the value added per worker. But there is a dire need to quantify the skill upgradation. Now, what is happening? Niti Aayog or the ministry gives out figures that we have trained so many lakhs or so many crores of the youth. We have imparted skills to them. It's not only the number of people we are training. We have to quantify the skills, the quantum of skills imparted to them, which should reflect in the increase in per worker value addition in his contribution to the GDP. So this is one area where we find unemployable people. We find unemployed people. People are unemployed because they are unemployable. Many global companies have not shifted out to India, have not moved to India. And the two pretexts that they give is that it doesn't have the robust manufacturing platform with proper ancillarization. And second, the human resource. Per human resource productivity levels are low. Of course, there are other reasons. They have some problems with the labor law. They have some problems regarding land acquisitions and other things, which we'll have to carefully look forward as a challenge. I feel the prioritization of relevant skills should be left to the industry for meeting their demand, and there should be a clear idea on those skills which can have a catalyst effect. Just giving skills, copybook theoretical skills to 5 million students in India without absolute integration with specific industry will not help much. One of the last things which should have been the first is agriculture, which I'll briefly touch. Um, 70% of the farm households in India own less than 1 hectares of land, and 85% of the farm households own less than 2 hectares of land. So that's a continuing challenge, and that challenge has multiplied manifold because most of the migrant labor which was absorbed in non-agricultural sector has fallen back to agriculture sector due to reverse migration. We hope and pray that this is a temporary stress. We hope and pray with the unlocking of lockdown conditions, the migrants will again go back in a more regulated fashion with greater facilities at their place of work. And this stress will reduce. But agriculture as such, and the allied agriculture, dairy and other things, they need to be tackled if we have to come at par with China. Indian and Chinese agrarian economies are the ancient economies of the world, and both the nations' massive number of farmers depend on this. Indian irrigation is monsoon based. China comparatively has more steady and well spread out rainfall in most of its areas. The reservoir storage of water supply in China for irrigation is almost 5 times that of India. Chinese agriculture productivity started improving since 1980s when the shift came from collective farms to household responsibility farming. As on date, the Chinese rice productivity is 2 times more than in India. So here is the challenge. Do we need to have more area under the agriculture, or do we need to multiply, to double our productivity of rice and paddy and wheat from the area already in cultivation? The share of agriculture in GDP in China is only 7.11%, which indicates it's developing, and other sectors other than agriculture are contributing well. But in India, it's 15.4%. The percentage of persons employed in agriculture in China is 25.1, but in India, it's almost double, 42.39. So this is another indicator that the shift from primary to secondary and tertiary sectors in India is still a very profound challenge that we have to face. Market liberalization. Recently, special packages have been designed for agriculture sector, and some legislations are also coming up. Ordinances have come, although the 3 ordinances, the Farmer Produce Trade and Commerce Promotion and Facilitation Ordinance, Farmers Empowerment and Protection Agreement Price Assurance and Farm Services Ordinance, and another one, there has been either a communication gap or some serious doubts which are yet to be addressed. If the government feels that they are absolutely good for the agrarian sector of India, the natural corollary should be that it will bring prosperity to the farmers. But if the farmers' bodies are agitating it against it, either there is a communication gap or there is some valuable feedback that we have to take, and all the areas of doubt need to be addressed. So even the good things have to be done by convincing all the stakeholders that they are good. So this is exactly what is going on now. Basically, agriculture sector is being open to market forces with the solemn intention of improving the plight of the farming community, bringing more prosperity to the sector. If that be so, this type of a confusion or agitations, etc., have no place. There's a scope for greater dialogue and interaction. Now, on the governance side, again, it's the re-engineering of business processes, technology, and data analysis is also a backbone of economic resurgence. So we'll have to very seriously get onto that, although already there is a DBT scheme, this scheme, that scheme, fake people are being weeded out because of introduction of technology and other things. And finally, without taking much time, because I'm finished my time slot. So one word about the environment. While we push the Indian economy to greater recovery for becoming global leaders in the long run, we must never forget the environmental concerns. Sustainable development goals must be adhered to in the long run so that for the future generations, we leave a very happy, and fulfilling life where they also have access to the bounties of nature. And we have to voluntarily adopt those technologies, those methodologies, which do not pollute the world the way we are polluting at the moment. So these are the challenges that the Indian economy faces. There are many others, and I'm sure Dr. J.S. Bedi will fill up the blanks that I have left and improved upon what I've said. And the only difference between you all and me is that most of you are teachers of economics, you are economists, and I am only a poor, stale student of economics. I hope I have done my bit. Thank you very much.
Sir, thank you very much, sir. Thank you for your wonderfully enlightening discourse. I'm sure everyone present has benefited, and we are grateful that you have spared so much of your valuable time for us, sir. And I would like to acknowledge that our very honorable Vice President of DAV College Managing Committee, Shri H.R. Gandhar, is also present. I welcome you, sir, and we are grateful that you have spared your time for us, sir. Thank you very much. Now over to Archana.
Thank you, Kaushal sir, for sharing your views. You have touched upon critical issues related to fiscal imbalances, banking problems, India's strategic foreign trade relations. You have very rightly pointed out that we need to remain positive, and India should continue to evolve as an emerging self-reliant economy. So we have ended your lecture on a positive note, and you have provided very prudent suggestions related to sustainable development, human resource management, skill development, agricultural development. All these suggestions are very, very convincing. So we thank you for your views, and now I invite Professor Bedi, guest of honor of today's webinar, to express his views on the theme of the seminar. Over to you, Bedi sir.
Thank you, Dr. Bakshi. Thanks for inviting me, Principal Madam Dr. Nisha Barwa, Madam Madhvi Bajaj, Dr. Archana Bakshi, Dr. Prerna Sharma, and other organizing committee members. Thanks for giving me this opportunity. And after Mr. Sarvesh Kaushal has, I think, covered most of the points. He touched upon entire economy, integrated with the various aspects, and I'll try to see what remaining portion I can cover, which is not touched. I think most of the things he has touched upon. I'll start with the screen.
Sir, your voice is not audible.
Yeah,
Yes, now it's okay. I think you have muted yourself. Your voice is not audible, sir. सर आवाज नहीं आ रही है आपकी.
Ma'am, I think he's trying to figure out his PPT, so we'll have to wait.
Okay. No, sir.
I think we should wait.
He has joined on the other link. Sir has joined on the other link. The previous link. Yes.
Yes, yes, sir. Yes, yes. Now we can see. No, no problem, sir. No problem.
Sir, your mic is still mute.
No, no, no. He's audible. He's audible.
No, ma'am, we cannot hear him.
And we cannot hear him.
Okay, but I'm able to hear.
Achha, he's not audible.
I was able to hear him. I don't know.
Prerna ma'am,
it
if you
okay?
can call Bedi sir. Yes,
Am
sir, it's
I-
fine.
It's
Yes,
fine.
sir, you're audible now.
It's fine, sir. Fine. You
Okay.
continue.
Okay. Supriya, Screen.
Yes, sir. Now it's perfect.
Sorry. These are the various sectors of Indian economy. This graph actually is from 1950 to 2018-19. In this graph, but I have taken 1977, 78 as 100 for all the sectors, and then look how the various sectors has grown over the period of time. And if we look at that, the services sector has grown much higher compared to other sectors, while the agriculture sector, as you can see, is grown at a very slow rate. Same is slightly better is the unregistered manufacturing sector. The registered manufacturing and economy has in between somewhere. So there are sectors which has grown quite high. There are sectors which has grown less. And the sector which has grown less are mainly those which are mainly engaging major employment, whether it's the agriculture sector or unregistered manufacturing sector. So I think this is the whole tragedy of our growth scenario over the period of time, that even if the growth has taken place, it has not benefited to the most of the people engaged in the economy. The sector, organized manufacturing sector or services sector has grown, and services also not all the sector has grown. Their services is a very diverse area. There are basically IT sector, hospitality sector, they have grown very fast, but then their services also grown into sectors like maid employment, the courier services were very low skilled, low paid jobs. And this phenomena has come more into light after 90s. This graph, which is next graph, which I'm sharing, this is putting various sectors in dollar terms and registered. Here the base point I've taken is 1966, 1996, 97 instead of 77 in earlier graph. Here you see the registered sector has even overtaken the services sector. So what the point which I'm trying to highlight here is that the unregistered and the agriculture sector, where most of the employment was generated, they have grown at a lower rate, and while there are certain segments, so whatever growth India has achieved, this has not benefited the entire economy. It has only benefited a few segment of the population. And the story which I think that we are less saving, we are investing less, it's basically, I think those are the supply aspect. I think major problem of Indian economy is from the demand perspective, of course. And this supply could only be constrained if public sector take an initiative and then start investing. But right now, we have left everything to the free economy. Privatized sector is basically investing, and they are investing where the profit is high. And since the demand is not picking up, the speculative activities are more profitable. Even after the COVID, the sector which has grown, you can see the share markets growing, you can see the gold prices rising, but the real growth is not picking up. despite government announcing several loan benefits, providing the easy loans to the corporate sector. Actually, that is not increasing the production or value addition in the economy. Now, this data highlights the lack of productivity in the sector, which imply most of the labor force. Value added in agriculture sector is only around 14.8%, while the employment in that sector is around 43%. Industry 27%, 15%, but industry is not one segment. I have divided into unincorporated sector, which is unorganized, smaller sector. There, the value addition only 4% of the GDP, and they are engaging 9.7% of the employment. Similarly, in the services sector, 8.7% GDP, unorganized sector, and they are engaging 30.3% of the labor force. While if we come to the other organized sector, around 27.3%, and they are only implying less than half employment, 15%. Similarly, services, 45% share of the GDP, implying only merely 1.4% of the basically employment. So if agriculture is taken as 100 productivity, then industry is 520, services is around 10,000 touching. Unorganized sector in industry and services, they are comparable to the agriculture sector. And they, if you add the unincorporated sector employment and agriculture sector employment, it is 82-83% of the total employment. So 82-83% of the people employment force is at a very low level of labor productivity. And that is a real issue, while other 17-18% have a very high labor productivity. This is one of the reasons why, because of this kind of, the demand is not picking up and manufacturing sector has not matured. And this is where the Lewis model, which shares basically the shares, basically Fisher-Clark hypothesis, that the share, first of all, when economy moves from developing to developed path, first of the manufacturing share will increase, then the services sector will increase. But in case of India, if you look at this yellow line, it has almost stagnant. Manufacturing share is almost reached at a peak at a very less than 20% level, while the services sector share is increasing in the GDP and agriculture sector share is declining. These all lead to, for example, this graph is a combination of growth and employment. Over the period of time from, if we look at this is a period from 1994 to 2017-18. The employment, these are the bar charts which shows them how the employment has changed. Employment has hardly increased. In fact, after 2011-12, employment is declining despite the fact that our population is rising, and that is the reason that unemployment rate is rising. While despite the fact that our economy is rising, all the sectors are growing. This is the sector-wise. In the different sectors, the employment growth has stagnant. Industry almost become zero after 2011. Services only slow down, but still growing a bit. Manufacturing, it is negative. Agriculture, in fact, it has started declining since long because surplus employment. Luckily, the labor participation rate in India has also started declining. More and more people started basically schools, and they are no more. But unfortunately, the labor participation rate, female are not finding it attractive enough. Lots of low educated females, they are coming out of the workforce. This is the productivity index in different sector again, the point which I repeated earlier. The services sector over a period of time is showing rise in productivity. Similarly, registered manufacturing showing rise, while the agriculture and unregistered, unincorporated sector is showing the low productivity growth. This was the background that we were always ignored the employment. We have basically grown those sectors where the employment potential was less, because we promoted capital intensive industry. We have not looked where our competitive advantages are. Our competitive advantage, we have not developed technology suitable for labor intensive sectors. And that was the need of our. Instead, we copied the developed countries model and start investing in the processed, high quality, high capital intensive sectors, and in the process ignored the labor intensive sector. In a way, what I will say that we try to copy the kind of model which China has along. But China FDI, though FDI in India has picked up after 2000, but nowhere compared to China model. The China basically, they have a much better governance system. They have controlled their exchange rate. They have controlled their cost of productions and invested heavily, which gave them growth of 14, 15, 17% over the period of time. While investment in India through FDI and all that has not given growth rate to Indian manufacturing more than 7-8%. Services, though, has picked up to 9-10%. And I think that is, this growth rate is not enough to provide employment to all. So we have left in between, and neither we have grown too much so that we can, in a capital intensive sector, so that we can provide employment to all those. Neither we have pushed the labor intensive sector which can provide employment. We have tried to copy those, but does not succeed. After this COVID, I think first of all, China is not going to lose its share. They are continually maintaining their competitiveness through all means by basically playing their exchange rate, paying their costs. And even if they will lose some share, it will not go to only one country, because now I think developed countries are very conscious that the supply chain is spread across countries and not remain concentrated in one countries. And so very high growth rate in the capital intensive sector is not a scenario. We have to look at the sector where we can achieve labor, where those are labor intensive, in which we can engage more employment by improving technology suitable for those sectors. There are several areas, rural areas, where I think better cold storage facilities, small cold storage, so that they cater to the rural areas. These kind of developments can lead to lots of basically give productive employment to lots of people. I think that is where we need to focus. Yes, one was that our economy was already very weak. We were not strengthening the sector where we should have focused, the labor intensive sector, and where there was a we need to focus. And then I think whatever employment is engaged in the unorganized sector, that is basically very low skill. People are actually pushed. They are engaged in those jobs because of their livelihood. They don't have anything else. They want to earn whatever they just survive. And even those sectors were hit very badly. If you look at this graph, this is from 2011 to 2019. And in this graph, what we demonetization, when the economy was it declined, resulted in the decline of the economy. Again, GST introduced. GST is a good concept, but the way it has been introduced, it has hit the smaller, it excluded totally excluded from the mainstream process the unorganized sector, because the unit which will purchase from the unorganized sector, they will not be basically get refund on the GST paid by the earlier units. So that is the result why the organized sector unit don't want to purchase from the unorganized sector. This way we have, though, put lesser GST rates on the smaller units, but they have been excluded. No one wants to purchase. They're excluded in the sense that the organized sector don't want to purchase from them. So this is an hello. This graph again shows from the 2017 onwards how the economy has come down, and lately in the last quarter, 24% decline has taken place in our economy. Now, after this COVID hit, our employment, which CMI number shows, was around 403 million, 40.3 crore. It declined to 28.2 million in April 2020. July, now it has reversed because people have no other livelihood means, they can't survive. They are coming back, but they are not getting much earning, but they are engaging themselves, trying to find out work, get 1 day work, few days work. So their earning has shrunk quite a lot. But even here, even now in July, the employment is 10 million lower than what it was in January 2020. The Modi predicted GDP to contradict around 11.5% in financial year 2021, and then expected to rebound to 10.6%. However, the problem of the Indian economy is much more severe and deep-rooted, as I pointed out. The GST continues to have its impact on the unorganized sector, and any technology improvement is not possible in this kind of situation because they have been excluded from the mainstream process. Cost of formulation is not allowing them to basically get registered, and because it's too high. Once they get registered, they have to follow various processes, and there is no government mechanism which supports them. In fact, it's a hurdles for them rather than any incentive, because they are not able to get any incentive of the government scheme. all ease of doing business and other incentives are for the basically taken by people who are connected. That's why Indian economy, in a way called crony capitalism, are basically only those people are able to take benefit with no someone in the bureaucracy or in the government. With GST implementation lost, and GST has created another problem, that autonomy of revenue of Indian state has been curtailed. So Indian, after the introduction of GST, 16 percentage point autonomy on its revenue of all the states has been curtailed, and it is left only, they are left with only 28% of resources to control. So in this kind of situation, when they have only control on 28% of the revenue resources, the center, there is now another problem has come cropped up, that the center has not basically going back to its committed the commitment that they will compensate the revenue loss in the GST for the next 5 years. And what they are saying, because it's basically caused by the guard, so that can't be compensated. We will only compensate it up the slowdown in the economy, and out of the 3.35 loss of 3.35 lakh crore rupees loss in GST revenue, only 97,000 crore center is ready to provide them, and that too in the form of asking them to take loan free of cost and for that they will facilitate. And I think that is a total breach, and in a scenario when the state should actually take all initiative to increase the demand, increase investment of public sector, they are left with no resources. Center even is not giving them the committed. And then I think the another problem, which I think Mr. Kaushal Saab has pointed out, is that the way we are giving loans, pushing banks to provide loans to the private sector, we are further going to push the banks into the NPA, which are already in the bad shape. So in this kind of scenario, it seems that there is a bleak scenario unless government takes serious step to basically accelerate the growth path for the economy. Thank you. I think that is my time. Hello.
Hello.
Anji.
Sir, is it over?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir, for your insight.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, sir, for your insightful presentation. Your valuable comments on diverse issues related to employment, structural composition of income and employment, the growth aspects of Indian economy were very pertinent, and the issues raised with respect to GST demonetization were really insightful. I thank you, sir. Now I request my colleague and coordinator of the webinar, Dr. Prerna Sharma, to reach out for the questions in the chat box so that we can have a brief question-hour session. Prerna Sharma, ma'am.
Yes, Archana ma'am. Thank you, Archana ma'am. So we can go ahead with the questions now. And I can see a lot of questions on the chat box. The first question for Kaushal sir by Sunil Fogar. The question is that every country is violating the rules and regulations of WTO. Then why not India? China violates the rules related to TRIPS a lot, very often. China copied other countries' technology in huge manner also. So this is the question, sir.
So the question is, rather, it's a suggestion that why shouldn't we break the WTO rules? Of course, national interest is the best interest. We can't break the rules, but we can tweak the rules to the extent possible, which every nation does, without ruffling the feathers on the other side, because economic decisions affecting other countries have a reciprocal backlash also. So these, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Ministry of Commerce and Ministry of Finance, they always try to make the best of the gray areas in the rules which can be tweaked in national interest. The second part of the question I couldn't hear because of there was audition problem.
Shall I repeat, sir? The question is, sir,
Yeah, please.
China violates the rules related to TRIPS a lot, and it copies other countries' technology in huge manner also.
It is a fact. Maybe it's an allegation, more of an allegation. I don't know whether it's a fact or not. These type of global wars, poaching on research and development results, it has been there for decades and decades. Sometimes it gets exposed, sometimes it does not. Ideally speaking, we should make our own research and development platform very robust and file the same number of patents that the Americans and the Chinese are filing wherever they are in the world. Actually, the research and development indicator is the filing of a patent. The filing of the patent also shows the fire in our belly to move over to higher platforms of technology and science from a primitive sort of a productive process to a high-end, high-value productive process which gives higher GDP. Now, if China is doing it or Russia is doing it, I mean, I cannot say that anyone should do anything unethical, but people keep on doing it till they are caught.
Right, sir. Yeah, right, sir. Thank you, sir. Sir, the second question is, it is our PG student. Sir, the question is, can the Atmanirbhar Bharat Abhiyan revive every sphere of the economy and make India self-reliant to sustain and tackle any event in the future?
I mentioned 5 pillars
Yes, sir.
of the economy. It had infrastructure, it had all the 5 pillars cover almost entire economy. And the funds pumped into it, I mentioned 20 lakh crores for the time being. I cannot say that it will be panacea for every nook and corner of all sectors of the economy, but it broadly covers the entire economy. Now, what is to be seen is that how it is implemented, how it is taken up, what sort of hand-holding is there. And another thing that we have to see is we are right in the middle of the COVID pandemic. We don't even know how much will it last. What will be the ultimate damage? Whatever we are talking tentatively. There are projections, and some of the projections may come true, may not come true. Ideally speaking, academically, this is the best coverage, Atmanirbhar Bharat. Now, what scale of funding is required to pump prime the Indian economy, to vibrate it, to give it buoyancy? That will depend on the total aggregate amount of damage that it has suffered recently. Otherwise, I think this is very comprehensive, in my view.
Right, sir. Very rightly said, sir. Thank you, sir. And the next question is, what can India do to address negative GDP growth? And what are the after impacts of COVID-19 on the private sector jobs? Yes, sir. I think this question is for Bedi, sir.
Oh, thankfully, yes.
Bedi, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, no, as I earlier mentioned in my presentation also, I think what need to be focused is, luckily for this year, agriculture growth rate has turned or remained positive, and that is one of the most saving things. All other sector has declined. And from the employment perspective, it is very important that we start focusing on the sector which are labor intensive, but not just for the sake of employment. It has to be productive employment provided by improving technology, improving some kind of investment in those sectors where there is a very low labor productivity right now. And so I think agriculture, as I pointed out, more than 80% of employment is in agriculture and unorganized sector. If we start improving those sectors, enhancing level of productivity there, I think that will serve the purpose. And that is where the demand initiative need to take, public sector investment, other initiative, easing the processes for these kind of unorganized sector. We have eased the process for the organized sector, but nothing has been done for the unorganized sector. And that is a need of the hour. And it, as the productivity need not to be, as Mr. Kaushal has also pointed out, we have to take into consideration the environmental aspect. Productivity, agriculture productivity, for example, in Punjab and Haryana, we ignored environment only by putting more fertilizer. That need to be avoided. The productivity need not to be only in volume terms. It has to be in quality, in value terms. So if we focus those areas, I think that will serve.
Yes, very right, sir.
If I'm permitted to add a bit, the postgraduate student who has asked this question, I would say that first of all, we have to have a whole body scan, like scan of the economy. What has caused the negative growth of GDP? Once we identify the triggers of negativity in this growth, we have to tackle that one by one. And those triggers of negativity are very well visible. We have to tackle them one by one. Some other points like corporate jobs. Corporate jobs depend upon their volume of turnover and profitability. There is a certain percentage of cost that they assign to labor. And within that cost budget, they have to give employment. Now, as I said, the national governmental deficit is now 7 to 8%, and the household savings are 11 to 12%. Just about 2% cushion remains as liquidity for the corporate sector. There's some savings which will flow as corporate investments. This is because of the COVID stress and other recent happenings. Earlier, it was 6 to 7%. Now, coming back to that, like whole body scan types, why is it that the deficit is so much? Because, as I said, our tax to GDP ratio is just 10%. Then how to increase the taxes? We go back. Should there be GST? Should there be direct? Should there be indirect? Is the tax net sufficiently wide, or our tax administration is porous from all sides and there are leakages? So the young student who has asked me this question with a lot of concern about the economy has to put the economy on the operation table and do a whole body scan and find the linkages from one trigger of negativity to the other and tackle it.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Bedi, sir. Thank you, Kaushal, sir. Now the next question. It is with respect to China and the other Nepal country. The question is, sir, India's relations with its neighbors have become quite challenging in the recent past. For example, China, India, China and Nepal. So do we foresee a negative impact of the same on Indian economy?
Is it for me or Dr. Bedi?
Okay.
Who is
So
to
I
answer
think
this?
definitely we have to spend a more percentage of our on the defense budget after this, and we are already scared of the resources, and definitely it will impact on the economy because we will be able to spare less resources for the development and defense, put a larger portion for the defense. This will ultimately impact.
Right, sir. Thank you, sir.
One positive point in the whole scenario in this is that perhaps this is a nudge. I'm speaking only from the economics point of view, not military point of view. That's a different matter. As an economist, or for the economic administrators of the country, it should be a nudge to wake up, to understand where we are, focus ourselves. If we have to match China militarily, of course, with higher defense budget spending and a very spirited, resolute Indian army, we can do that. But if we have to prove ourselves and emerge superior to China over the next 20, 30 years, 25 years, that superiority has to have its roots in our economic superiority. So it's a nudge. Maybe it works positively if we take it in a positive sense and have a solemn resolve that we are going to do something better. These indices of today shall not be the indices of tomorrow. Then perhaps this is a very positive nudge that we have.
Right, sir. Thank you, sir. And the question from our Madam Kamaljeet Kaur, when will GDP start rising? Yes, sir.
Dr. Bedi.
When will GDP start rising post-COVID?
As this Modi agency, actually, they predicted from next year. But as I think the things are quite gloomy right now, as I pointed out, because not only the economy has started a decline, employment decline, but our resources and then the federal revenue resources stuff, they are also basically the conflicts emerging out of that. Then what kind of impact it will have on our banking system, their NPA, and how later on we will tackle that. Ultimately, the loan and borrowing which will take during this period has to be repaid, and it will further rise the tax on the people, and that will further impact the economy. And I think, as Mr. Kaushal have pointed out earlier, still in a transition stage. No one knows when it will end, when people will find fully secure on the health aspects. And once that will be done, I think only then by that how much damage it will be done on the banking system, on the economy, and other. Only then one can really assess the total damage and how the recovery path will start.
Right, sir.
I have one suggestion for the research students. If they can draw a parallel curve of post First World War and post Second World War and this post COVID epidemic, and study how reconstruction took place, there will be some idea of the pattern of responses after such calamities. This pandemic is a bigger calamity than even a world war. Because we call a world war, entire world is not impacted. This has impacted the entire world. And at that time, the economies were more of primary centric, not the tertiary and secondary sector centric that they are now. And therefore, at that time, they were more robust and could take the hits and revive. I think Dr. Bedi has answered it for my education also very well. When the factors pulling the GDP down will loosen it a bit individually, not only in India but globally. When the life turns normal, it will start improving, and it will definitely improve. It is not something permanent, because nothing is permanent in this world. There have been Spanish flu, there have been plagues, there have been world wars. The world has still progressed. See the Far Eastern miracle. See Korea, see Japan, how they have recovered after being totally destroyed in the world wars. So it's a bad situation. We are going through bad situation, and I can't improve upon the answer given by the great Professor Bedi. But my feeling is that things will improve. We'll do as well or slightly better than the other countries of the world.
Right, sir. Thank you, sir. And I think one more question now by Harshita. Is fiscal stimulus a boon or bane on the economy, Indian economy? And what are the measures that can be taken to increase the demand in the economy, given the current scenario? Yes, sir.
Bedi साहब करेंगे या मैं करूंगा जी? आप you must assign the task. You must assign the task between two of us. Who should answer this?
Yes, sir.
Dr. Bedi, please. You have the prerogative. No, he's not audible.
Bedi sir, you're not audible. Bedi sir, may I request you to switch on the mic?
Yeah. Now, Ms. Kaushal has given example of World War. After that, you see, what was the policy pursued after that? Keynesians, basically, the heavy investment by the public sector in the sector, and that even now, several countries, Canada, Australia, several countries adopted that model. India also devoted around several crores of rupees for that. But most of that is in terms of giving finances, loans to the corporate sector, not direct investment, or to the people who are affected directly into their pockets. Basically, that is given loan, and that, because the demand has not increased in India, that easy accessibility of loan actually has resulted in speculative market to some extent, that I suppose. But what was the need was that the public sector should start investing in areas which are crucial so that employment could be generated in the sector. That is not coming because we are already having a major resources problem. Because of this lockdown, now it has created now the states may not have enough money to pay their staff. This is a kind of crisis we are facing. So even the existing employment in the public sector may not feel safe, secure. So when we are facing with those kind of constraints, I think again, labor-intensive sector, facilitating those sectors, creating some kind of facilitating their processes is the only way out. I think remaining questions I will answer.
Yeah, in fact, the second part of the question was that can India become self-reliant? Indian economy has to cater to the demand that we create. As I said that, of course, we can become self-reliant over a period of time, provided our industry sheds its internal inefficiencies and it stops passing on the cost of its inefficiencies to the consumer and stops offering indigenous goods of low quality at higher prices as compared to the goods that we are importing. Of course, the government has come up slowly and steadily with policies of import substitution. Now, there's a huge extra payment involved in import of coal and so many other things. For that, I think Atmanirbhar Bharat should be an emotional trigger also. There are certain things, of course, if they are not made in India, like for the time being, some type of defense equipment or some very major biomedical engineering products. There's nothing that India cannot make. But what about us? Our generation, my generation, has grown up using mostly Indian goods. We used to have Indian pens, Indian notebooks, Indian clothes, Indian spectacles, Indian watches, HMT. Even the Prime Minister used to wear HMT. What has happened is that commercial advertisements and marketing techniques over electronic and other media has taken away some amount of prudence that a normal consumer used to have. If we resolve not to have foreign goods where Indian goods are present, I think it will give a huge boost to the demand for made in India products. And once that happens, of course, we will become self-sufficient. Our imports will go down. And maybe we'll start exporting. If China can export all over the world, and before that, Japan could export. If Japanese cars are running in thousands and lakhs in the United States of America, if Japanese and Korean cars are running in India, what is so special about them that we cannot make? All that we need to do is that industry has to be efficient and we have to be prudent with little bit of a nationalistic instinct to save India. Vocal for local. I mean, sometimes people with political affiliations have to criticize everything that a particular leader says without understanding that there is deep merit in what he says. I mean, Atmanirbharta is self-reliance. Self-reliance is consuming things made in India. Maybe we are consuming them as raw material for the industry. Maybe we are consuming them as APIs for pharmaceuticals. Maybe we are using consultancies for digging tunnels and making thermal plants. Why can't we do it? Our technocrats are all over the Silicon Valley, making America richer. Why don't we create platform for them so that they can work in India and live a dignified life? China has SEZs. China has ancillarization. China has liberalized the labor laws. China's labor productivity is much more. Agricultural productivity is much more. We don't have to blame the governments or the economic administrators. We don't have sufficient fire in our belly to grow, to move up. That's what is required, I think.
Very rightly said, sir. We should be more emotionally connected to the Atmanirbhar Bharat Abhiyan. Right, sir. Archana ma'am, do we have time? Shall I take one more question or should we wind up? Yes? Just switch on your mic, Archana ma'am.
Can we invite Madhvi ma'am for a formal vote of thanks now?
Thank you, Dr. Archana. Good afternoon, everybody, special dignitaries who are present here. We at Mehr Mahajan DAV College for Women believe in being part of the solution rather than delving on the problems. Our conviction to turn every challenge into an opportunity is what makes us one of the premier institutions of the country. Carrying forward the legacy, the webinar on Indian economy challenges ahead sought to envision the horizon beyond what is visible. And the presence of great economists who graced this webinar definitely gave us fresh perspectives on the current state of Indian economy. I am grateful to Sarvesh sir for enlightening the curious students in the face of COVID-19 on the following aspects of the Indian economy: resilience of Indian economy, banking sector, its role and problems, challenges of financial governance, role of Atmanirbhar scheme, China's presence in India trade, issues of manufacturing sector, better use of demography by skill upgradation, role of agriculture, and above all, we need to protect environment in the face of development. With a grateful heart, I am beholden to Sarvesh sir, former Chief Secretary, Government of Punjab, and Professor J.S. Bedi, Professor in Economics, IDC Chandigarh, for making this webinar truly meaningful and helping us feel the pulse of the economy. In the current times of Corona, when the world is feeling burned by all spheres, including economy, guidance of such stalwarts in the field of certainty is the need of the hour. I would also acknowledge the contribution of my faculty members, Dr. Archana Bakshi, Dr. Prerna Sharma, who are behind the success of such event. Finally, I would express my deepest gratitude to Dr. Nisha Bhagwa, our Honorable Principal Ma'am, an eminent economist herself. She is always guiding us and motivating us onto what are the benchmarks in the term of academic pursuits. And my special thanks to Dr. Gurdeep sir, who has spared his valuable time. And I have heard that Dr. Gandhar sir is also present. Thank you very much, sir, for always being the support. Special thanks to Ashish Modgil for providing end-to-end technical support. A big thanks to our dear students and faculty members from across the country who participated in the webinar. We look forward of having all you again to be part of more and more humble endeavors as we move forward towards building a more vibrant economy. Once again, thank you everyone. Have a nice day. Jai Hind, Jai Bharat.
Thank you everyone.
Thank you.
I once again thank our eminent experts and all the participants of the webinar for sparing time for us, and we had an excellent time. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Archana. Thank you very much. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Can we all switch on our cameras for a screenshot? Can we all switch on the cameras for a screenshot? Ashish sir, please join.
Yes, ma'am, कर रहा हूँ.
Preeti ma'am, Preeti Kambir. Manvi ma'am, are you there?
Yeah, I'm there.
Okay. Excellent.
Thank you once again, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Archana. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Please.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Ashish.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Done. हो गया.
Sir, thank you so much. For
Thank
all
you,
the
Prerna. Thank you, Anchal.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone.
मैम क्लोज कर रहा हूँ मैं.
जी.